Good afternoon. Welcome to JLG's webcast series, Book Club Tips and Tricks, Losers, Legos, and Little Bugs with Renee Newry. I'm Joel Franklin. You can listen in today as Renee Newry joins Kaylee Hanlon, JLG's webcast host, to discuss tips and tricks for creating a successful book club. They will also share new releases from JLG's Fall 2017 selections that are perfect for your first book club meeting. Please join the conversation on Twitter. You can tweet us at Junior Library Guild, that's JR Library Guild, and use the hashtag JLGWebcast. If you have any questions or comments, you can send those in at any time via the red Q&A box. It's hard to believe summer is over and school is back in session. I imagine many librarians are looking for a way to get their kids reading after the summer slump. Perhaps a book club would be beneficial?
A book club would absolutely be beneficial, Joel. Today I'm speaking with Renee Newry, who started a book club in her elementary library. Renee, thank you for being with us. Can you tell us about your book club and how it started?
Yes, good afternoon. My book club started several years ago when I was working in elementary school, and it was a more traditional book club where I was working with a small group of students. And as I was working with those students, the excitement started to grow as we would finish a book and I would let them choose the next book. They would get super excited. And I really enjoyed the insight the students had about the books and the characters. And over time, the groups began to grow because students would come into our library and see that I was working with a small group and, ask me, what are you doing with those kids? And I'd talk about book clubs, and they would want to join in. And I'm like, well, we have to talk to your teacher and all of those things. And so it kind of started traditionally. Well, as a librarian, I was focusing on, teaching literacy skills and helping to build that lifelong love of reading. But, of course, there's just one of me. And so I constantly was trying to find ways to bring in more book clubs in between all the schedules and teaching. And so that's kind of where I was searching, looking for another avenue. Well, I had the opportunity to hear Donalyn Miller speak. She's the author of The Book Whisperer. And she talked about how her students were all reading a variety of books in her classroom. And I thought, well, that's amazing. Everyone's reading a different book and having book discussions. But the key was that she said that the students were leading the book discussions. Now, at this time, I believe they were teens, but it kind of clicked for me that, oh, my goodness, I could use that model to host more book clubs. But where am I going to find the space when I'm, having classes and teaching? And so this is kind of where my student-led book club idea was born, where the students would take over leading all of the groups as they were reading books.
Wow, that's really impressive to have your students lead the book club. So
yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say one great book example for elementary would be the Losers Club. So our beloved author Andrew Clements is back with a great upper elementary book about Alec, a kid who just wants to read his books and be left alone, something I'm sure we can all relate to. But seriously, Alex is known for reading during class and not focusing. So when a principal sends a note home about his lack of participation, Alec needs to find a way to continue his reading without interfering with school. So enter the extended day program, an aftercare area that Alec and his younger brother Luke are placed in. Alec thinks this is going to be heaven. 3 full hours of reading, up until the program director tells him being part of the extended day means he is to join one of 3 groups: the homework group, the active games, or the club group. So Alec hatches a brilliant plan to create his own club where he can sit silently and read. Of course, he creates a very creative name in order to ensure other kids do not join his group. However, his plan backfires when more and more students begin to join his club. So follow along as Alec learns that people, just like books, can't always be judged by their cover. And sometimes you need to experience life, not just read about it. And this book is a great read for elementary book clubs because the story will capture even the most reluctant reader and keep all kids' attention until the very last page. It also offers suggestions of other children's books to read in a book club setting in the back of the book. Many of these books are the ones that Alec himself or the members of his group are reading during the Losers Club. So, Renee, unlike Alex in this story, librarians want to be able to recruit new members to their book club. Can you tell us how you recruited members?
Yes, so after that training, I was able to start with my small groups. And I brought those groups back in, and I just started talking to them about, our experience in book club and what they thought, what they thought they would be able to do if they were leading the book club. And so we were able to start small, and each of those students that were in my former book clubs became a leader. And I charged them with finding a co-leader and finding members in their classroom or in their grade level that would have a similar lunchtime that could join the students. And so those small groups of students started to come into the library during lunchtime. They would bring their lunch either bring their lunch from home or bring it from the cafeteria and join their group to read in the library. Well, recruitment was pretty easy at that time because other students that were coming to check out books on passes or with their classrooms would see the students reading, and they would inquire, what are those students doing? And I talked to them about, well, they're leading a book club. Go over and, talk to them. Go check it out. And so a lot of it was that advertisement with the students, being able to see that the students were bringing their lunch. I mean, some of them were surprised that they got, those students were able to eat in the library. And they would just hang around and listen to the conversations that the students were having about the books, and then they would come and ask me. Now, for our recruitment, I would tell students, you can go and find out what they're doing, but students were only able to talk about book clubs with me during their checkout time when they came with their class to the library, if they came on passes, just to make sure that we weren't interrupting the instruction or coming out of class to come and talk to me. And so recruitment, like I said, began with the students, and then I took our recruitment to the entire school. After we kind of had, we started with about 15 book clubs, but it quickly grew over the years to 75 book clubs that were meeting during the week. Now, this is small groups of students, 4 students at a time, meeting 1 day a week with their book club. And so we started to make announcements about leading a book club, coming in for book clubs. And so I used our announcement system. I sent, notes out on our Facebook and Twitter page to encourage parents to encourage their students to join our book clubs.
Wow, that's so awesome that you were able to get them excited by just having them be right there watching the other kids read. So another tip to recruit readers is pairing a book with an activity. A great example for middle school readers would be pairing The Stars Beneath Our Feet with a Lego makerspace area that could draw students in. Debut author David Barclay Moore brings middle schoolers this compelling novel about Lolly, a 12-year-old boy growing up in Harlem and dealing with the recent death of his older brother Jermaine in a gang-related shooting. When Lolly's mom's girlfriend brings home 2 big bags of Legos, Lolly starts to see a shift in his life. He's always loved Legos and begins building a fantasy city in the community center. He loves building, but the pressure to join a crew is always looming. And when Lolly and his best friend are robbed and beaten up, it seems like a safe choice. So this story could bring to light so many hot topics that some of your students could be facing today as a book club choice. And it can be a great way to talk about life experiences in a safe environment through the character of Lolly. When offering food, goodies, or activities, sometimes budget can really be a factor. Renee, tell us how you fund your club.
Well, our book clubs, since they meet during the day, the students bring their own food, but I like to incorporate activities, and of course I love to give free books. One of my favorite things to do is to give kids books for their home libraries. I've worked really hard to find additional funding, such as we have a Irving Schools Foundation grant in our district that provides funding for book projects. We also have I've done some national grants, unsung heroes, about our book clubs. And so I've won probably over the years, several thousands of dollars for our schools, various schools that I've worked at, to gain funds to buy those books. And of course, being a librarian, working in book fairs, I usually use my book fair dollars to purchase sets of books for our book clubs. Now, as we've grown in our book clubs over the years, some of these student-led book clubs have turned into makerspace groups where students have, led groups in makerspaces, or students have started, coding clubs where they incorporate the books that they're reading about coding, and the students are also coding. So different activities that we've done have come out of our student-led book club. Our students, they really take ownership in being a part of these groups. They know that it is their responsibility to create the reading plans, to create the plan for their group. They also know that even the activities, they're always able to come and say, our group would like to write a story about what we're reading, and that group will write a story. Or the group will want to do, we've even had some groups that have done some service projects based on their group. So sometimes the readings will lead them to do other things. Grant writing is, for me, the best way to gain funds for our book clubs. And also in our district, we have interlibrary loans, so kids can put books on hold from other campuses, and they have that access to thousands of books. Now, the key for our groups is that they have to plan ahead. So there's so many soft skills that students learn from being in book club, one such as, the communication piece, and also preparing and understanding that when they're 3/4 the way through the book, they start to order their next books or talking to me about what they want to read. And so many activities have come out of book club, but the main thing is to, look for grants. There's so many grants out there to fund our projects in the library. So just look for those, and I typically look for the ones that are not so complicated, that don't take a lot of time, but I get a lot of, effort and money from those grants.
Grants are definitely a great way to use those funds. That's an awesome idea.
Yes.
I also like that your kids, even at a young age, are taking responsibility and handling their own book club, because that is something that that could flow over into the teens as well. And speaking of teens, the next book is going to be Wonder Woman Warbringer. So another resource is to use your own library, such as using a book that was made into a movie. So you may already have both the book and the movie in your library, and you can read together and talk about the different perspectives on the storyline. So Leigh Bardugo is back, and she's writing this amazing story about Diana. It's structured similarly to the many the superhero movies that we're all used to, with action and fight scenes and, of course, sarcastic humor. Diana, Princess of the Amazons, will one day become Wonder Woman. But for now, all she wants is to prove herself to her legendary warrior sisters. And Aaliyah just wants to enjoy a semester at sea and escape her overprotective brother. But when there's an explosion on Aaliyah's ship, she finds herself on an island with Diana as her only hope of survival. So together, Diana and Aaliyah will face an army of enemies. And if they have any hope of saving both their worlds, they will need to stand side by side against the tide of war. And as I mentioned, using the movie and the book can be a great compare and contrast discussion during a book club, as the two go down very different paths with Diana's journey. So warn your teens and your younger readers that the movie and the book are very, very different.
Right.
So Renee, how do you structure your book club?
Well, I've learned a lot of tips and tricks about running book clubs in the last, 8 to 10 years, because they grow so quick. Because the students get to choose their group. So the first thing is that students choose who they want to be in their group. Because of our lunch schedules in schools, sometimes the kids are in the same class, and sometimes they're in same age but different classes, and so they may come in at a few, 5-minute increments or like that. But students can come 4 at a time. I used to let them be larger than 4, but I started to find when I would come in, I'd walk into the library after teaching a class, because I do have a full-time clerk, so students were always in there during the lunch times from 3rd through 5th grade. But I'd find that furniture was being moved because the groups were growing and growing, so some groups would have 7 or 8 students in the group. And so sometimes that would become a problem when we needed to, do other things in the library. And so I do limit it now to 4 students in a book club so that we can maintain our space and everybody can work together. But once the groups have their group, we meet together. Their first time to come, we go over the rules. We talk about, behavior in the library, what the roles of the leaders in the book club and the co-leaders. So we have a leader and co-leader for each book club. And they're basically in charge of helping the group find the book, come up with a reading plan. I have a training session for our leaders at the beginning of the year, and that's where I teach the leaders about what good readers do. We talk about questions, and I give them information of how to lead an effective book club. I also give each group a small notebook that they can use so that each time they meet, those students that are participating sign in so that I know who's there and who's in the group. Sometimes the groups are flexible and students will come or go. And so they have a notebook that they just write a short reflection, sign in, and so that I know what they're reading, or they'll write me a note about what they want to read next. And so as the students are meeting in the library, like I said, they are eating. Now, there's different ways. Some students will take the books home, and they'll read at home. And some of our students, especially our fifth graders especially, they tend to like to read during book club because of their schedules, and they are so busy. And so sometimes they'll read in the library while they're eating and discuss the book as they're eating and talking. And so there's different ways they learn to manage the groups, but it's been very effective having them choose, what they want to do, because not every student has the time to take the book home because they have other assignments and things like that. And so another way that, I help them, we have question stems and posters up in the library about what good readers do, so the students can refer to those posters. Now, my role is the facilitator, so if I'm not teaching another class or doing, if I'm not teaching or if I'm in the room, I walk around and I facilitate. I talk to the students about what they're reading. I'll come and ask them questions, and mostly finding out how they relate to the characters in the book and how they're enjoying the books that they're reading. The main thing that I love is that they have the freedom to read what they want to read as a group. They have to come to consensus, and I have had some groups that have said, we all want to read a different book and tell what we're reading, which is also fine to do. And so it does look different for each group, and, the main thing is that they're discussing and that they're learning to have a conversation. Sometimes, I'll come in and they're not talking about the book. They're just having a wonderful conversation about school or about what's going on in their life, and a lot of times we can tie that back to what they've been reading. And so the structure is, 4 students, 3rd through 5th grade. They come once a week to the library for book club. But a kind of funny story is one day I came into the library and I saw one of the groups, and I thought, I saw you guys yesterday. So I just went on thinking maybe not. And so the next day I came in, and that same group was there for lunch again. And I finally said, wait a minute, weren't you guys here 2 days ago? And they looked at me and they said, well, we decided we were just going to come every day because we really want to finish our book. And so, how can I'm not going to turn a kid away to want to read a book, but it was kind of funny because it was hilarious just because those students were so invested. And that's the thing, they're so invested in book clubs because they have ownership. They run the library. They have access to all of our books in our, in our AV room and in the library. A lot of times they're the first to get the new books because they're there when I'm unpacking the new books. And so they get a lot of privileges also from being in book club. So they love it. I love it because I love to see their insight and their excitement about reading.
I wanted to ask you, do the groups that you put in, the groups of 4 that you have, do they all read the same book most of the time, or do they read different ones? And are they all the same age or grade level?
Yes, they're all, because of the way our lunch schedules are, they're all the same grade level. And most of the time, yes, they read the same book. I've had a few groups that wanted to venture out, and it may be like sometimes if it's a book, a very popular book that I have that I might have only one copy of each in the series, sometimes they'll say they want to read it anyway, and so they'll all read a different book and just talk about, the characters in the story. But most of the time, they're reading the same book, and that's, we're able to get those copies.
Awesome.
Most of the time.
Well, another book for teens is going to be The Art of Starving. This deals with topics of body image, eating disorders, LGBTQ, and family issues. So as a moderator of a group of older kids, you could provide a place for teens to talk about these hard themes in life in a respectful and safe place. Sam J. Miller brings to life Matt, who has discovered that if he starves himself, he starts to have powers. His mind is sharper, he sees things he shouldn't see, and he hears the thoughts of others around him, and the longer he goes without food, the more his ability is affecting time and space. And he needs his powers to figure out why Tariq and his bully friends cause Matt's sister Maya to leave home. As Matt infiltrates Tariq's life, he starts to discover things are not as they appear. So teens who enjoy reading Adam Silvera and Laurie Halse Anderson's work will definitely enjoy this book. And again, giving teens the ability to structure their own book club, choosing books both higher and lower than they're usually reading, and adding value to their book club will ensure that they feel that they're contributing and therefore participation would be higher. Two more JLG selections that would be perfect for book clubs are The List and The Tiny Hero of Ferny Creek Library. So how many words do we really need in a language? 1,000? 500? Well, in Ford's novel, The List, people of Ark only use 500 words. That is, except Letta, the wordsmith apprentice. And her job is to keep track of all the words and their meanings. But one day, when the wordsmith Benjamin disappears, Letta finds herself in charge of shortening the list. In this post-apocalyptic world, Letta befriends Marlowe, a desecrator and outside to Ark. And with the help of Marlowe, Letta uncovers a sinister plan to suppress language of all of Ark citizens. Can Letta and Marlowe save not only words but culture itself? Well, you have to read to find out. But this is a perfect book club book, as the plot touches on many topics of discussion you could use with your students, such as words, the meaning of language and communication, and totalitarianism. There's even an educator's guide with the comprehension and conversation starter questions, which can be found in the JLG Livebinders Book Talks to Go, and I will mention that at the end of the webcast. Oh, The Tiny Hero of Ferny Creek Library. Oh, this is such a cute bug. Eddie is a tiny green bug who loves to read. Eddie, his parents, his 53 brothers and sisters, and his beloved Aunt Min all live behind the chalkboard of the 4th grade classroom at Ferny Creek Elementary. But when Aunt Mim fails to return home after venturing to her favorite place, which is the school library, Eddie leaves home to face the dangers of the outside world to go find her. He discovers Aunt Mim is stranded in the library because of 2 broken legs. And to make matters worse, Eddie and Aunt Mim find out there's a substitute librarian who's getting rid of all the books and wants to use the space for a testing center. But have no fear. Eddie comes up with a plan to save the library. Will it work? Can this little book-loving bug save the day? Well, again, I'm going to let you have to read to find out. But I will say this is a great choice for elementary because it's a captivating storyline, and it has black and white illustrations that will keep your kids engaged. And it can also bring about a discussion to how to improve their own school library, just like Eddie does in the story. Renee, is there any one particular moment during your book club sessions that really stands out to make all the hard work worth it?
Yes, there are so many stories as I run into families and, that former students, and I talk to parents about, being in school and book clubs. I hear lots of stories from parents that say, that talk about the impact that book clubs have had on their students. Now, these are the students leading it. They are making an impact on each other. They're building relationships, and they're, building those friendships that they can take on to middle school and, hopefully, continuing on those discussions and book clubs. But one in particular, I had a group of boys that were in 3rd grade, and those boys would come to book club every week, and they were so excited. And, of course, like I said, they would see the new books, and they would want to use, the new books for book club. But sometimes I would only have, one copy of that new book because it just came out. And so the boys had picked one of our new books, and they were reading it together. I only had one copy. And I was, trying to convince them, would you like to read something else? And I'll work on getting the book. They refused. They really wanted to read that book. And so I said, okay, I'm going to work this weekend. I'm going to work to get the book for you. Go ahead. And so I came to work on Monday, and the boys came in. And I said, okay, I'm really struggling getting this book, and they said, it's okay, Miss Newry. And I'm like, what do you mean it's okay? They said, we already finished the book. And I said, what
What?
do you mean you already finished the book? It was Friday that I talked to you. Well, these 4 boys, one of the boys, they convinced their parents to drive them to one of the boys' homes, and they all sat at that boy's home, and he read the book. They all took turns reading the book out loud, and they finished the book over the weekend. And I kind of welled up thinking about, that they convinced their parents they weren't going over to play, with their games. They were coming over so that they can read. They wanted to finish that book. They were so engaged in the book that they did that. And I of course, whisked them over to the principal to, tell the principal about what happened. And so that always stuck out to me. And of course, when we came back to school this year, they were the first group to say, when are we starting book club? And when are we starting? And so the excitement that they have, that they take ownership, they don't really, need me to tell them they're ready to start the minute we say go. And so that's one of my favorite stories because I couldn't believe that they, finished the book over the weekend. I just thought that was so great. And
That
so
is
they,
an amazing
our book club.
story.
It's a great story. And,
Oh,
and I mean, there's just story after story of students that, sometimes I have parents that'll encourage their students to be in book club. And I'll say, I want them to have the free choice. But then, we'll get kids in there that their parents are like, be in book club. They see what's going on and they end up loving it. And it really has changed, their reading career, life as a reader. Because I truly believe it's the free choice that they have to read what they want to read. It's their lunchtime, and so they're in control of, when they come and what they're reading and what they're discussing, and they love it, and they stay on task. I've always had, great success. I've never had any discipline problems or anything like that because they love coming, but they know also the expectations of what is expected when they're coming to book club, which is to read and discuss and enjoy yourself because reading is fun.
Absolutely. Wow, don't tell you
Yeah.
no boys can read, and they're not interested in books. That's an
That's
incredible
right.
story that they just
That's
took
right.
it upon themselves to move forward and didn't even wait for you to order the book.
Yes,
They
I
said,
was
no, we're
very
good.
surprised. I'm so excited. They're good. Yes, that was one of my awesome stories. I tell you, and like I said, there's story after story of kids that if you ask them, what do you like about book club, and they have so much to say about the relationship piece too. They're building those long-term relationships across a book that they all love.
Speaking of relationships, have you ever had a child that maybe an outsider, unpopular, or not, like wants to join book club but doesn't have maybe the 3 other friends that these boys had? Do you put them in a club with other people? Do you try to get them involved somehow?
Yes, yes. I have had students that maybe, they'll want to come and spend time in the library, maybe instead of going out for recess, and we never know what those reasons are. But sometimes, I'll pull those students into book club so that they can form those relationships. And sometimes, they just need that extra boost or to show that, this is where I'm strong. I'm strong in reading. I'm a strong reader or a strong, advocate for books. And so it does give those students that are maybe more, shy and they don't want to, they don't want to talk in front of the group, but they're happy to read and be a part of the conversation. Maybe they're not, leading the group, but they can be a part of it. So I do think it does help those students as well.
I love that, making them a part of a group that they can thrive in. So I hope
Yes.
that Renee's story inspires you all to start your own book club. And for more resources, Deborah B. Ford, our Director of Librarian Outreach, has written 2 articles on book clubs. 1, Funding Your Book Club, and 2, Building a Better Book Club. Both can be found on our website as well in our September e-newsletter. And in addition to telling you about great books, remember we are always creating resources to help you use these books. You'll find these resources for today and other selections in our JLG Book Talk to Go Fall 2017 Live Binder. So this is what I was talking about when I talked about the list. This is where the education resource would be for that book and others. Remember to look on the book detail page as well for the link to the Live Binder resources. So you can find everything you need on our website. And tune in next time on September 21st as Deborah is joined by Jody, JLG's newest book talker, as they discuss the new JLG fall selections for middle and high.
And also, check out our website after the webcast for the recap blog post. You'll find a list of the books we discussed today. You don't want to miss these links to their book detail pages and plenty of other resources. Once again, now is a good time to click on the certificate folder. You can print out your certificate of attendance. Thanks again to our guest, Renee Newry, for spending some time with us, and thanks to you, our listeners, for supporting us with your time. Be sure to ask your account rep about all of the books and categories. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to help you out. After the webcast, you'll receive a very short survey, and thanks again for making the time to give us some feedback. Always appreciate that. Tomorrow, you'll receive an automatic email regarding today's webinar. If you follow the link, you can watch the archived webinar and print your certificate of attendance after 10 minutes of viewing. Till next time, thanks again for joining us, and happy reading.